I'm Dr. Michael Siegel, and I'm a professor at the Boston University School of Public Health.
If the assumption is that e-cigarettes are not the assumption, but if the research is there that e-cigarettes are safer than regular cigarettes, why is there this disconnect between that research and the FDA?
I think there's really two major reasons why there seems to be a disconnect between the science and the policy on the issue. Mm-hmm. The first is that there is a long tradition of tobacco industry attempts to try to put out and market safer products that have turned out not to be safer. So for many years, the tobacco companies kept putting out one product after another. There was Eclipse, there was Accord, that they claimed were safer products that turned out not to be safer. They were just essentially tobacco industry ploys to make it sound like a safer product, but there was no evidence that they were actually safer. And so I think people in the public health movement, in the tobacco control movement, are scared, rightfully so, because of this tradition. The problem is that times do sometimes change, and you have to be able to recognize when something really has changed. And with the case of electronic cigarettes, it really has changed. For example, this is not a product that contains tobacco. It's not a product made by tobacco companies. And so this is not a tobacco industry ploy. I think that people in public health really have to recognize that we're talking about a very different situation here. This is not a typical tobacco industry ploy to try to get around regulation. This is really a different industry, and it's a different type of product. So I think that's the first reason. And the second reason, I think, is ideological. I think that anti-smoking groups have a hard time condoning a behavior that looks like cigarette smoking. Holding an electronic cigarette and using it looks like a person is smoking. And I think that scares many people in tobacco control because they feel, how can we possibly condone an activity that looks like smoking? And what they've lost sight of is the fact that it's not smoking per se that we're trying to protect people from. It's death. It's the harm that's caused by that behavior. And if you can find a way to do that behavior and go through those motions that actually doesn't cause death or is much less harmful, then perhaps that's something that we absolutely should be condoning and should not only be condoning, but should be supporting. It should be promoting people to try to quit using that method. So I think a lot of this has to do with the historical role that modified risk products have played for the tobacco industry, and I think a lot of this has to do with this ideology, this mindset of kind of this quit or die mentality that either you need to quit tobacco completely or you shouldn't be doing anything that resembles smoking.
If there was one place that the FDA were to go to first, whether it's research or modifying the regulation that's already out, where would you suggest that place be?
Well, I think clearly the FDA needs to regulate electronic cigarettes. You really can't have this product out there that's completely unregulated. It needs to be regulated, and I think it needs to be regulated under the Tobacco Act. But I think the important thing is that it be regulated in a rational manner, and in a manner that is cognizant of the relative difference in risk between different products. It makes no sense to have tobacco cigarettes, which are the most harmful product on the market, essentially be unregulated, but have electronic cigarettes under extremely stringent regulations. So I think that the regulation needs to meet and needs to match the level of risk. And so a perfect example of this is the modified risk provisions of the Tobacco Act. I think it's very important that the FDA not apply those provisions to electronic cigarettes, because if they do, electronic cigarettes companies will not be able to mention to their consumers that these products are safer than regular cigarettes. They won't even be able to tell them that these don't have tobacco in them, because those would be modified risk claims under the legislation. And so I think the FDA needs to take a very sensible position whereby it excludes electronic cigarettes from many of the regulations within the Tobacco Act, and that it focuses instead on really the quality control issues, making sure that companies are not using low grades of propylene glycol, making sure that basic quality control standards are being met. Those are the types of actions that are needed to protect consumers. But the product should be left on the market, and marketers should be able to accurately inform their consumers that, yes, this is a safer product than regular cigarettes, and that, yes, switching to this product is probably going to improve your health.
If you could make one really bold prediction about what's going to happen in electronic cigarettes in the next year that you think is still feasible, what would that prediction be?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that within the next year, the FDA is going to promulgate regulations, or at least propose to promulgate regulations for electronic cigarettes. So I think that the key action that's going to occur in the next year is regulation of electronic cigarettes. Of course, the question is, what is that regulation going to look like? And I really think that the answer is not in yet. I think that the FDA is still actively thinking about it. And in fact, my hope is that through the kind of conference that we're having here at TMA, and through other input that the agency gets before it promulgates its regulation, that it will take into consideration the testimony of scientists and many others who have studied these products, and will make a rational decision and will not apply the modified risk provisions to these products, and will come up with a kind of carve out a separate niche of regulation that recognizes that this is truly a reduced risk tobacco product and should not be in the same category as regular cigarettes.